disclosures, but I do have a few disclaimers for today. So let's make sure this is going to move forward. Okay, so, first of all, social media is a huge topic and it's way too big for a 1 hour talk. So that's the first disclaimer for today. My second disclaimer is that social media is constantly evolving. Our platforms are in constant flux. So if you think back to 2020, pre-Musk days on X, aka Twitter, it was this amazing hub of medical education and community, and it is a very different place today. So, take what I say with a grain of salt and know that it might be different in a month or two, and you can blame it on the algorithm. And then finally, social media is highly personal, and everyone uses it differently and has a different approach when it comes to using it for public health advocacy. And this is just my perspective. It's not the one true way of doing things, it's just one way to approach it. But really, my goal for today, if anything, is to convince you to actively engage in social media for public health advocacy. Wherever you might be in your social media use, I really want to nudge you a little further along on your social media for public health journey. Whether that means finally setting up your account or posting finally about an issue you care about, or just simply reassessing how you use your voice online, I really hope that this talk kind of helps move you along. So, given that you're here spending your very precious time in a talk about social media, you probably already know, at least instinctively, that engaging in social media is important for public health. But I think it's nice to take a quick step back and review a few social media fundamentals to remind ourselves why this space is so important for public health impact. So, Merriam Webster defines social media as forms of electronic communication through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and to connect. It's where we connect, we inform, we learn, and sometimes regret reading the comments, right? And arguably, I think the first truly large scale form of social media, at least for me and for probably many of us here, was AOL Instant Messenger. AIM really gave us our first taste of real time online connection and all those dramatic away messages that were super popular when I was in college. And AIM, along with other pioneers in the early days like Friendster and MySpace, these networks really laid the groundwork for social media that we know today and began to demonstrate how powerful online connection can be. And since those early days, social media platforms have just rapidly expanded and multiplied. And these logos just represent some of the biggest players in social media today. And it doesn't even cover it all. There are newer contenders that we have to think about, like Threads and Mastodon and Blue Sky, that have all jumped into the fray to compete with X for the text based throne of social media. And I think when I think about social media, sometimes forget that there are platforms like YouTube and Reddit and WhatsApp that all offer their own spin on how we connect and share and occasionally overshare. But when we're talking about social media within the context of public health, these are really the big five that I like to think about. And they are Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter, and LinkedIn. Facebook launched in 2004 and remains a go to for older audiences, and today boasts about 3 billion users. X arrived in 2006, but really didn't hit its stride until about 2010. And it really stood out for its short, punchy text based posts, like public health haikus. And it has about 600 million users today. There's Instagram, which launched in 2010 and quickly became the home of visual storytelling. So, selfies, your favorite food pics, and perfectly filtered images, and is still thriving today with 2 billion users. Then there's TikTok, and the original TikTok precursor launched in 2014, but then rebranded in 2017 here stateside, and it's really skyrocketed since then. It's the video content king with over 2 billion users. And today we're not going to be able to dive deeply into TikTok, but a lot of the principles we're going to discuss can apply there as well. And then last but not least is LinkedIn, which actually predates all of the other social media platforms I talked about, debuting in 2003. It has 1.2 billion users and has a very professional, mostly text based kind of feel to it, although visuals are starting to gain ground on that platform. So, across these platforms, social media use is essentially ubiquitous. As of earlier this year, 5.2 billion people around the world, roughly 65% of the world's population, are on social media. So, across the world, internationally. And they aren't just dropping in occasionally. The average user spends 2.35 hours a day scrolling, liking, and sharing on social media. Over 2 hours a day. They could watch a whole movie or a documentary in that time, right? And what I think is really interesting is in the US, we don't really actually lead the charge in use for social media. We are about average. There are other countries on other continents that have higher usage rates. Here at home, though, when you look at all age groups, about 73% of Americans are active on social media on a daily basis. And social media use is not equal or uniform across the population. Each platform has varying penetrance into the US market. YouTube technically takes the crown as the most popular platform among Americans with an 85% use rate. And when we start to dig into the more classic ones we think about for public health impact, you have Facebook at 70%, followed by Instagram at 50%. TikTok and LinkedIn are at 33 and 32%, respectively, and then X falls behind at 21%. And then not only do the platform usage statistics vary, but use varies across age and gender and ethnicity and race and urbanicity and education and a lot more. And this is really important to think about when you're planning a large scale social media campaign. So, for example, social media use is much higher in younger age groups at 84% in 18 to 29-year-olds, and then begins to dwindle as people get older down to 45% in those who are 65 and older. Another similar trend to think about. Facebook remains very popular in people kind of our age demographic who came into social media when we were, in college and what have you. But among younger age groups, people where social media has always existed, things like Instagram tend to be more popular. But beyond the fact that the vast majority of the public is on social media, there are a lot of other key groups that we may want to influence in public health that are on social media as well. Nearly every single legislature maintains a social media presence and actually has staff dedicated to managing those social media accounts. And even as more and more of the public have extricated themselves from X, more legislators remain active on X these days. Major organizations, including public health heavyweights like the American Public Health Association, are also active online. Companies that we may want to impact, like Fisher Price and their various unsafe sleep products, are also just a tweet or a post away. And then there are also traditional media outlets on social media, which creates this valuable opportunity for public health messages to leap from social media onto mainstream coverage. So the bottom line here is that social media isn't optional anymore. When it's used wisely, it's a powerful tool for public health education, advocacy, and action. And I think one of the best ways to really show the power of social media in public health is through real world examples. Now, I come from the world of pediatrics, so my examples all kind of skew that way in general, but you will find parallels across every corner of public health. And here on the left, you can see Dr. Nicole Baldwin, who is a pediatrician and a standout when it comes to educating the public and fighting disinformation, specifically around vaccines. This viral TikTok on vaccines not causing autism and preventing diseases predated the pandemic and really helped set the stage for a lot of pediatricians and public health scientists to disseminate credible science based content related to vaccines and other public health issues. In the middle, you can see Dr. Peggy Stager, who is talking about the impact of teaming up with traditional media to highlight how voting can impact health outcomes, where civic engagement meets public health. And then all the way on the right side of your screen, you can see doctors Sarah Denny and Ray Bignall demonstrating how powerful it can be when we directly engage with elected officials, turning posts into policy influence. The next two examples come from Mr. Jamie Grayson, who is a very widely followed and well-respected child passenger safety technician or CPST. Here you can see Mr. Grayson calling out some of the problematic messaging that has come from this newer car seat brand called Baby Arc. When they launched, they had some questionable social media content claiming that their car seat is the safest on the market. So he was very vocal in his criticism on social media, had multiple posts regarding this. And rather than his claims and criticism being dismissed, Baby Arc actually turned it into a partnership, creating an opportunity for Mr. Grayson to help shape safer messaging and product understanding for that company and for the betterment of everyone who might follow child passenger safety topics on social media. The second example comes from last spring and really shows the real-time responsiveness of social media. So hopefully all of you have heard of Paris Hilton. And last spring around Mother's Day, she posted a TikTok which depicted her youngest child prematurely forward-facing in their car seat. And thanks to his very um, big presence on social media and his credibility, Mr. Grayson was paged or tagged by his followers, and he was able to step in and respectfully provide guidance to Paris Hilton behind the scenes. And then she took it a step further and actually corrected the issue, went to media outlets, and posted it on her social media, making it a teachable moment for millions of parents across social media about the importance of child passenger safety. So I think it's another great reminder of how social media can spark instant advocacy and public education, even in Hollywood. But you don't have to be this hugely popular CPST or physician or anything along those lines to or have a huge following to do this work. You and your voice belongs on social media too. As public health professionals, we are trusted voices. We're seen as credible and trustworthy, pushing forward evidence based information. And many times, not always, we're considered above the political noise. We also have powerful stories that can humanize the data, highlight community struggles, and move people to care and act. So take my friend and colleague, Dr. Sophia Chaudhry, shown here on this slide. She's also a pediatric emergency medicine physician, and she uses her platform to advocate for reducing pediatric firearm injuries, bringing both data and heart to the conversation. This is the kind of impact we can all have. Your voice matters, and social media is just one way to make it heard. So, hopefully, I've convinced you that social media isn't just for dance trends, and it's actually a serious tool for public health impact. So, let's talk about how we can get started leveraging social media for public health impact. So, if this is your first foray into social media, there are a few key things I want you to do. And first, I want you to claim your professional social media handles now. Well, maybe not now, maybe in an hour when we're done with this talk. But even if you're not planning to be active on every single platform out there, grab your name, your handle while it's still available. It protects you from impersonation and keeps your future options open. So maybe 10 years down the road, you decide, you know what, I really do want to invest a lot more into TikTok or X. And you already have that handle reserved, that perfect curated handle that you have grabbed today. I do want to share with you a story about why it's so important to choose your username very wisely. You want to aim for something professional, easy to spell, and that can be consistent across platforms. And I will say, if you're stuck, this is a really great opportunity to leverage ChatGPT to help you come up with a good user handle. But my cautionary tale is when I was a resident in pediatrics, I joined Twitter back in 2009. And I thought I was gonna go and be faculty at UNC, and I didn't expect social media to be part of my professional identity, so I picked a very punny handle, Tar Healer, as a nod to being a UNC Tar Heel alum and a physician. And now here we are, more than 15 years later, and on X, I'm still at Tar Healer. And it's got character, and I love it, and I'm attached to it, but it's, not the most discoverable or an intuitive professional handle. And at this point, changing it could confuse my followers. So, I highly recommend that you learn from me and think about starting with a handle that grows with you from the beginning. Because again, you never know where your future may go. I also really recommend that you make it a priority to secure your accounts, enable two-factor authentication, and any other security features that might be available. It doesn't take very long, and it can save you from a major headache down the road. There are bad actors out there, and a hacked account not only jeopardizes your message, but it can damage your professional credibility. So treat your account like your work email or your electronic health record login. Keep it locked down. When you're getting started, I also want you to take a moment to review your institution's social media policies. Trust me, you don't want to get a call from HR about something you posted on social media. Institutions can have some surprisingly strict and quirky rules or very minimal rules altogether. For instance, are you even able to link your social media profile to your institution in your bio? Some places may even have policies that discourage you from using your real name. So, this person here on the screen is Dr. Megan Martin, also a pediatric emergency medicine physician. Huge, massive social media following, and she actually goes by Dr. Beach Gem 10 because of her hospital's social media policy. The bottom line is you want to know the rules before you post to save yourself some stress and help you with social media confidence. And while most institutions don't require it, I highly recommend adding a disclaimer to your profile as another layer of protection, something like opinions my own. And especially if you are a healthcare provider, maybe something along the lines as this does not equal medical advice. Now, the next thing I want you to do is then to pick one platform to focus on. Each platform has its own vibe, rules, and quirks, and trying to do all of them at once is a fast track way to burn out. So, when you're trying to think about what platform you want to go to, you can either lean into the one that you are most comfortable with, that you use a lot, or you can be a little bit more thoughtful about what you think will be easier for you. So, LinkedIn is great if you want to go for more policy, academic, or organizational influence. The audience is very professional, it's a more formal and more friendly place to be. And it's valuable, but it's not quite as buzzing and as busy as other social media. Facebook is still really used by a lot of parents and adults, and it's great for organizing local events and sharing community resources. And also connecting with your own personal networks that you may have cultivated from when you joined Facebook in the early 2000s. But just keep in mind that your younger audiences, your college age students and what have you, are skipping out on Facebook altogether. And instead, you're going to find them on Instagram, which is visual based. And it's really, really great for storytelling, especially through photos, reels, and infographics. But I will say, compared to the others, producing that visual content can feel a little intimidating at first. Although I do have some tips for that later on in this presentation to help you get over that hurdle. And what I will say is, I do think X remains one of the most accessible social media platforms for beginners. It's text-based, so it's pretty easy to do even when you're in your pajamas and or on the fly without any special editing tools necessary. And even though the feel of X has definitely changed over the years, thanks through people changes and algorithm changes, it still does remain a positive place for real-time conversations, especially with journalists, policymakers, and fellow public health pros. Once you've chosen your initial social media platform, I really think the next step before you start posting what have you is to actually follow and observe others active in this space. This step is about shaping what you're going to want your present to look like by learning what works, what doesn't work, and also thinking about what really inspires and moves you. The institutions and organizations you're already involved with are really great places to start. Watch what they post. What topics do they highlight? And then what topics do they steer completely clear of? It can provide really valuable clues on how to begin your own journey. For example, the Children's Hospital where I work historically has avoided conversation about pediatric firearm injuries. And after a lot of effort from our injury prevention team, we now have our hospital addressing safe firearm storage. So now we can talk about this on our social media and say, hey, we do this work with children's. But we also know that our hospital does not go anywhere near firearm legislation, and we can never, ever on our social media link that to our hospital. So following what your hospital or your organization does is really, really helpful and can protect you. It's also really great to seek out your colleagues from your institutions and organizations to build your network and see what they post about and to follow their lead. And then find those people that you admire, the people you kind of fangirl over, like, oh my God, they're so big and amazing. Follow them, learn from them, and maybe steal a good idea or two as well while giving them due credit. And then from there, I want you to build your network even more and do what's called snowball sampling. So, what you want to do is you want to think about, well, who do you follow? So, for example, one person that I follow is Dr. Lois Lee. She's one of the first people I followed on X. She is also a pediatric injury prevention person. And so I follow her, but then I actually look at, who does she follow? Who does she think is important? Who does she amplify? And then conversely, who follows her and amplifies what she has to say? And then I can look at these accounts and I can say, this person is also a physician. This person posts a lot about, product safety. Maybe I want to follow them too. And this is how you can build a network that aligns with your own interests and values, and to really help, again, build your experience and expertise with what's being discussed in social media in your areas of public health interest. So we talked about getting started, and note to this point, we haven't actually posted a single thing. This initial phase that we've been talking about is all about building your foundation, assembling your toolkit before starting the job. And really, the next step is really thinking about this pyramid of social media engagement. And the way I think of it is, each level requires a little bit more time and effort, and each level is important for the next level above it to really build your social media public health impact. the bottom level, we have discover. And this is really just consuming social media content for your own awareness and knowledge. Even if you never ever post a single thing, this is still a valuable act. It helps you understand what people in your field and the general public are talking about and how it might impact your work as a public health professional. So, for example, as a PEM physician, social media can help me understand some of the injuries I see. Like when I saw a teen with a major concussion from participating in the infamous Skull Breaker Challenge pictured here. Bottom line is the person in the middle is going to fall down and hit their head, and it's going to be really ugly. The next level is amplify. And this is where you start to share the content of others. This might include retweeting, sharing, commenting, or even saving posts. All of these actions signal to the social media algorithms that this content that you have interacted with is important and deserves a wider audience. So when you do this, you're not only sharing this content with the people who follow you and who are in your own network and appreciating the original creator, you're actually helping that message reach people you might not even have a direct connection to via the algorithm. The third level is annotate. And this is where you add your own thoughts and insights to someone else's content. It's about personalizing and contextualizing while continuing to amplify others' messages. It shows your expertise and it adds value to the conversation. Amplify and annotate these two middle levels is really where you start to strengthen your network. It's where you begin to build relationships with people who appreciate your engagement. And many times they will return the favor when you move up to the top of the pyramid, which is create. But before we go into create, I want you to remember that all of these levels of social media engagement have value, especially in public health. And how far you go on this pyramid is really up to you. And if social media isn't part of your formal job duties, you can shift your level of engagement anytime. Now, most people are going to spend the majority of their early time on social media for public health impact on these bottom three levels. And while you're doing that, I really want you to consider what you want your social media presence to be. So, what do you want your voice and personality to convey? How do you want to represent yourself and your work? So, a good example of this is for me, I'm a little bit of a goofball. And so I actually make a point when I was posting on X more frequently to actually share gifts that I thought were funny and exemplified whatever I was responding to. That is how I chose to represent myself on X. And you want to think about how do you represent yourself on various social media platforms. So this is also where you need to pause and reflect about how much do you want to share of yourself online? How do you balance that personal expression and professionalism? And there really isn't a definitive single answer, but you have to be intentional and own your social media choices because your digital footprint is permanent. Even if you delete your account, even if you delete the posts, things can resurface. A good example is Chrissy Teigen, who back in 2011 and 2012 bullied another social media character. And eventually it came to light a decade later, and Chrissy Teigen was effectively canceled. You don't want that. You don't want to put something out there today that's going to come back and you're going to regret it a decade from now. And I mean, this is important because you're always representing yourself. And whether you like it or not, you're kind of a brand. And we don't know where life is going to take us. You might run for Congress like Dr. Annie Andrews on the left. She's trying to become a senator. I guarantee you that was not on her bingo card when she was a pediatric residence on call in the middle of the night. Or you might become a beloved grandma influencer like retired pediatrician Dr. Flo Rosen on the right. She was practicing pediatrics when social media didn't even exist. So, how could she have even thought about this being a part of her future? You don't know where your life is going to take you, and your future self is going to thank you for being thoughtful about your online decisions today. And whether or not it's fair, you're also always representing public health. And I like to remind trainees and people in medicine that we're always representing medicine as well. And, you know, as a single person, your posts can shape how people perceive your field, your institution, and the values we uphold in public health. Your words carry weight, so you need to make sure that you're using them wisely. As we're thinking about this balance between personal and professional, I think we also have to talk, though, about authenticity. So authenticity can really help you with audience buy-in. If you look at these three physician social media influencers, going from left to right, Dr. Tommy Martin, Dr. Betsy Crunch, and Dr. Megan Martin, they've built some really large engaged followings by sharing both their personal struggles and their professional wins. And they've talked about navigating natural disasters, celebrating parenthood, exercising, their pets, even their favorite food obsessions. This openness, it c- creates this authenticity and it creates this persona that people can connect with. And at the end of the day, people connect with people, not with polished resumes. So them saying, hey, I went to med school here, residency here, I've done this many surgeries, that's not what gets people to follow them. It's them sharing that authentic content about who they are. But authenticity comes with a need for boundaries. And you need to ask yourself, what am I truly okay with sharing with strangers on the internet? You don't have to be an open book. That is not a rule. You don't have to do that to be successful. You could just be a curated chapter. So, here from left to right, you see Dr. Jessica Nurick, Dr. Uche Blackstock, and Dr. Will Flannery, aka Dr. Glaucoma and they have all been into very, very successful, but have also been very cognizant about keeping their children and their families off camera. And yet they still have powerful voices online. So, my point here is that you share of yourself what you're comfortable with. Nothing more is required. You do not need to parade, what you used to do, what your home looks like, or anything along those lines if you don't want to. And kind of expanding on that a little bit more is the concept of, do we share our family lives as well? So on the pro side, it can humanize us. It can be a welcome reminder that the person behind the data dashboard or, computer screen is a real person juggling real life. And let's be honest, right? Like cute kid pics can brighten up any feed and grab attention and make heavy public health topics more approachable. I think a good example is, when I talk about child passenger safety, I think it's a different level of humanity when I also talk about like how sweaty and gross you can become trying to properly install a car seat. But it comes with concerns, and primarily your loved ones, they deserve control over their own social media narratives. That sweet photo you might post today could someday cause distress or embarrassment down the road. And believe it or not, your child, as they get older, may decide, I don't want a digital presence at all, mom or dad. We also have to remember that once something's online, it's never fully back in our control, and there are real risks from digital misuse to malicious actors, especially with the advent of AI. So, and even worse, trolls can sometimes weaponize what we share about ourselves and our loved ones, which is completely unfair. But it's just something to consider as you're thinking about what you want your social media presence to look like and how much of your personal self you bring out. Ultimately, whatever you choose, I think the loved ones in your life deserve thoughtful consideration. On a personal level, I mention that I am a mother because it's very core to how I view pediatric injury prevention. I literally have to do this every day for the tiny humans in my life. And on the left is a post where I shared about being on inadequate maternity leave that went oddly viral. And I felt fine sharing that journey with others because it was more about my journey. And on the right is one of the rare photos that I've shared on social media of one of my kiddos. And I felt safe doing it because she's not naked. Well, she is, but you can't tell because it's my husband's well placed hand. And it's not easy to necessarily pair this up with what my child is going to look like decades down the road. So I was very thoughtful and intentional when I said, okay, I'm willing to post this, but I don't put everything out there about my children. So, how can we strike this balance between the personal and professional expression? One strategy is to think about keeping separate accounts for personal and professional use. And this is something that you can decide to do today. If you only have one account, you can make the shift now. I did it when I started leaning more into Instagram. But you could also do it in such a way that Instagram is for my personal network, my friends and families, and LinkedIn is only for my professional work. One bonus of maintaining two accounts on the same platform is that I actually get to curate two completely different content feeds. So on my personal one, I get all sorts of cute memes and puppy videos. And on my professional one, I get all the really important medicine and public health information that is important to me that but maybe I don't want to look at 2 in the morning when I'm trying to relax and go back to sleep. Another guideline to think about is the grandmother rule. And the idea is that you don't post anything online that you don't want your grandmother to see. But really, it's not about grandma because let's face it, some of us don't necessarily have the best boundaries with their grandma and would share anything and everything with them. But it is about your colleagues, your boss, your future employers. If you have a post that you're thinking about putting out there and you wouldn't be comfortable explaining that in a future job interview, it might be worth reconsidering. Now, this isn't to say you have to be serious all the time, right? We are human beings. You can still be funny and relevant. I think Dr. Wendy McDonald, seen here, who also goes by Dr. Everywoman, is a really great example of this. Her content is informative, but it's also very bold, hilarious, and completely on trend. But she owns it. She does not back away from it. It is who she is, it is authentic, and she's okay with that. So again, you can be funny and relevant. You can post quirky things if you want to. Just be okay with owning that that is who you are. And then you always want to think about posting with purpose, with thought and an intention to navigate that personal professional divide. So I think a great way to think about it is what do I hope to this post will achieve? If it's going to educate, empower, and advocate, that's great because purpose driven content tends to land better and resonate longer while reflecting well on you. But sometimes you might want to cover a topic that is emotionally charged for you. So if you're planning to post something that raises your heart rate, and I think a lot of what we do in public health gets us jazzed and gets our heart rate going, you might want to take a pause before posting. Are you reacting to something or are you creating something that will have positive impact? Again, it doesn't mean that you need to avoid frustration altogether. Some of the most compelling public health content is rooted in real emotion, but you want to be thoughtful. So, what exactly are you sharing? And I think Dr. Vicky Chan here has done a really great example of this. She used social media earlier this year to really candidly share the frustrations that many people in healthcare feel about dealing with insurance companies. So rather than just venting, like, I spent forever on the phone with this insurance company, she was very clear and intentional in making sure that her post was clear, thoughtful, and grounded in advocacy and education. And finally, if you're unsure about posting something, bounce it off a friend. Find your trusted colleagues who can give you an honest take on what you're about to share. For me, that's my friend Dr. Kristen Melchiors. She is now co-chair with me for the social media committee for the Injury Free Coalition for Kids, and we regularly bounce things off of each other. I have other friends that I do this with because while social media might feel like a solo activity, especially if you're scrolling at 2 in the morning, it can very much be a team sport even before you post. So, we've set up your account, you've built your network, you've spent your time discovering, amplifying, and annotating on those first three levels of the pyramid of social media engagement. You now even know what you want your voice to be and how much of yourself you're going to share online. Now comes the top of that pyramid of social media engagement. Create, right? Yay, exciting. And I'll tell you though, when I first made the leap for creating for a visual platform like Instagram, it really felt intimidating. It felt like I was standing at the base of Everest in a t-shirt and shorts and completely out of shape and unprepared. So what I want to try to do now is share with you some trusted tips to help you gear up for this climb. And hopefully with practice for you, just like for me, content creation is going to become easier. The climb is going to become manageable, and it might actually even become enjoyable. So, one of the ways that you can create is to think about tapping into existing resources. So, a lot of organizations offer plug and play toolkits around key issues or awareness events. So, like Child Passenger Safety Week in September. Prevent Child Injury has over 30 plus toolkits to start with, and other organizations also will have toolkits. So, rather than starting from scratch, you can use the content that already exists there and is meant for people to share on their social media. You can also repurpose your own content. Did you already give a talk? Did you already publish a paper? That's gold. You are an expert. You've done a lot of this work already. In time, I've taken slides and adapted papers into X and Instagram posts. It's just another way of working smarter, not harder. You can actually leverage AI or Chat GPT carefully as well. So you can use Chat GPT to brainstorm post ideas, to draft starter text, to even suggest images or links or basic graphics. But remember, you are the expert and ChatGPT can hallucinate things that don't really exist. So you have to use your knowledge and your time to actually fact check and fine tune whatever it gives you. So, as an example, you can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me 5 post ideas about hospital based violence intervention programs. And then when you get those ideas, then you can tinker with them and tailor them based on your real world experience and expertise. Another thing that you can do is you can use the tools you already know. So you might hear a lot of people for Instagram in particular talk about using Canva. And there are like always more apps that are out there about how you can make this post, do this, do that. You don't need to learn all these apps. If you're not a Canva pro, it's not a problem. You know what? PowerPoint works. You can resize slides for social media templates, or you can take screenshots and turn your slides into simple shareable visuals. One of the first things we did for our social media committee on Injury Free is we actually asked our committee members to design a social media post on PowerPoint because so many of them had already used it. And then we just resized it to then actually put on Instagram. Batch creating your content can also be a really great strategy. So instead of trying to create new content every day, set aside a big block of time and create multiple posts at once. So, for example, 4th of July is around the corner. So maybe you want to post information about firework injury prevention. So carve out a couple of hours, pull all your resources on pediatric firearm injury prevention, and then create lots of different posts that then you can parcel out between now and the 4th of July. That's what I mean by batch create. And then you have to remember you want to maximize or extend your reach. So tag your collaborators to encourage shares. If I'm posting about the talk that I did with Dr. Chaudhry, I'm going to tag her because she's going to share it with her followers as well. Use relevant hashtags so your audience can find you. Now, this doesn't mean add 50 hashtags at the end of your post. That's a bit overwhelming, but thoughtfully curate 5 to 10 that might go with the post and the content that you're sharing. And you shouldn't be afraid to ask others to amplify your work too. Most people in public health are very happy to do so when it fits their niche. So, as a good example, the social media channels I manage, we routinely receive requests for content amplification. And if it matches the account's niche, we are very, very happy to share because we're all playing together in the sandbox and trying to make the world a better, healthier place. Another strategy is to really try and lean into the creativity. And I think that this has been one of the things that I've really come to enjoy about social media, and it makes it something that I'm jazzed about, is that creating content can actually be a refreshing change of pace. It's designing graphics, it's picking out colors and font, it's crafting clever puns, it's picking that perfect song or gift to go with whatever you want to share. It's a challenge that we may not usually get in our day to day work, so lean into it, embrace it. It's something different. It's new and it's something fun that we get to do. And then the last piece when it comes to creating content is just to remember to keep a growth mindset. It is going to take a long time for you to create your first post, probably. It's not going to be the fastest thing ever. But that's the thing is that content creation is an iterative process. You will get faster, you will get better. And if you think about it, that you're just going to try to learn one new trick or tool every single week, by the end of the year, that's 50 new skills. So tiny gains in a week, but a big impact over time. And just always remember that your voice and your insights and your lived experience belong on social media. So I want you to go forth and create because your audience is out there. Now, I think, though, the biggest barrier when it comes to getting on social media isn't just the content creation aspect, it's this. It's dealing with the bad actors, the misinformation, disinformation, and the trolls. They are unfortunate realities of social media. And if you spend enough time online, you're going to encounter them. But I think the good news is if you have a game plan on how you're going to handle this, it really takes away a lot of the stress and makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to try to give you parts of a game plan that you can pick and choose what you want to employ. So before you ever engage with any disinformation, misinformation, or trolls, you need to stop and you need to think. You have to remember that any interaction with a post, even to debunk it, it signals to the algorithm to amplify that content. Okay. So you see something, you're like, oh, that's so wrong. You know, bed sharing is really, really dangerous. Why would they say that? Stop. Assess the post. Look who posted it, review their other content, and then know that your strategy is going to really depend on the nature of the source. So let's say the post is inaccurate, but seems to come from a well meaning person. So, for example, bed sharing is fine. I did it with all my kids and they turned out great. This might be a misguided parent sharing their personal experience. It might be someone commenting on your post on the importance of safe sleep. It might even be an acquaintance from your past, from high school, that typically cosigns all the stuff you say about infant safety content. In these cases, it's reasonable to think about engaging. And if you're going to engage, you really want to think about using just limiting yourself to one comment. You don't really want to get sucked into a debate. You want to think about how what you're responding to, how you're trying to speak to that broader audience. So, not necessarily the person who posted that content that you don't agree with, but rather the people who are scrolling by to reach out to others who might be undecided. You want to link to trusted resources to support your message. And for sensitive situations like car seat photos, like what Mr. Grayson did, you might want to even consider doing a private message, right? That whole idea of perfect in private, praise publicly. And then in the context of the COVID pandemic, Berkeley linguist George Lakoff came with the idea of using the truth sandwich. So this is a communication tool where you start with common ground, something that's positive, like I know we all want what's safest for our babies. And then you get to that meat or that misinformation or lie, and you address it dead on. But bed sharing has been shown to increase the risk of sleep related deaths. And then you close again with a truth and a positive takeaway. Fortunately, there's safe ways to bond and stay close without putting your baby at risk. Yeah. Oh, and I see that I actually have a little random mark here. So I'm going to leave that on so I don't mess up this presentation. But I'm sorry about the red mark on the screen. Now, let's say the post is coming from a bad faith actor, a troll, or an account that's known for spreading disinformation or misinformation. Before you do anything, again, you're going to stop, pause, and ask yourself, okay, is this post actually going to gain traction? And is it actually worth the emotional energy? Now, if you think that there's a high likelihood of impact, you may want to choose to engage, but you want to do so with caution. You want to keep it short. Again, you want to speak to the bystanders and not to the original poster, using trusted resources and thinking about applying the truth sandwich. But honestly, if it feels off, if it's getting ugly or personal, I highly encourage you to have a low threshold to block and report. You do not owe anyone a response on social media. So again, you can respond, keep it short, and low threshold to protect yourself. But most of the time, that harmful negative content's just not going to go far. And by responding, you could potentially just boost visibility via the algorithm. And your mental health matters, and your time matters, your energy matters. So, as a public health professional, you have to invest that time and energy where it matters most. And a lot of times, it's not going to be the troll. So, just don't even waste it there. More important to combat the misinformation and disinformation is to really be louder and to drown it out with excellent content that really puts out there the truth. So even if you've seen that same message posted 10 times, back to sleep, empty crib, alone on their back, add your voice. Just because person A, B, and C already said it, you can be person D. It's okay. Because here's the thing, you never know what your voice might bring to the situation. To someone looking at your post, you might bring familiarity. You might bring representation because you look like them. You might be more relatable to them. Or it might just be the right time for them to hear this message. They're finally ready to hear, hey, yeah, safe sleep is important. Your voice could be the one that sticks. So I'm wrapping up now, and I just kind of want to recap that, again, we talked about how social media is ubiquitous and vital for modern public health. We talked about some strategies to help you get started thoughtfully, including your profile setup with attention to security, and then how to really build your network. We explored the pyramid of engagement where all levels are valuable. So discover, amplify, annotate, and create. We discussed how to balance your personal and professional identities and being thoughtful about what you choose to put out there. And then I tried to give you some really practical advice on how you can create content and then manage misinformation, disinformation, and trolls. So with that, it's your turn. I am happy to answer whatever questions might have come up. I know I went kind of fast and there's a lot here. So yeah.
Thank you, Maneesha, for this wonderful presentation. While we're waiting for people to put things into chat, I'm curious about your journey. Did you start as a student or a like an individual and then get into professional posting, or how did you start the professional posting?
I started on a completely personal level. So I joined Facebook when I was like a first or second year medical student, and it was just a way to keep in touch with people. I joined X when I was a resident because I was like, what is this X thing? And then when I was in fellowship, I had a mentor say, hey, you should enjoy the dialogue on X. You should, post what you learn in conferences. So then I started just tweeting out, hey, I learned this in a lecture, that sort of thing, just really kind of sporadic, nothing super duper organized. And then what happened was the pandemic in 2020, and I had a non-voting position on the Injury-Free Coalition for Kids board. And they had decided they wanted to kick off their very first ever National Injury Prevention Day, and they wanted to do a Twitter chat as part of that. And so the board kind of looked around and like, you're the youngest person in the room. And Lois Lee was like, and I've seen you on Twitter, so you're going to do this. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. Sure. And that was kind of the start of this journey. So you never know who you know who's going to kind of shove you into this. And since then, I've just been more intentional and continue to kind of grow in it. I've made really great professional connections. I have a bestie at Nationwide, Tracy Meehan, who I've never gone to meet in person, but I've worked closely with her for over 5 years now. And it's been really great. Again, it was not something that I thought I was going to do and has become part of my life. So,
Do others have questions? Feel free to come off mute as well if you'd like to ask directly.
Hey, Dr. Agarwal, this is Preeti. I know we've worked
yay.
together before. I think you're amazing,
Aw,
inspiring. Um, I do the social media for our organization for Georgia Clinicians for Gun Safety. And so that's why I
yeah.
really and I personally like haven't posted on my own Instagram in like 5 years or so. And I really have enjoyed it. And
Uh,
your comments about especially handling um either opposing views or trolls, I think was super helpful. Um, do you have any advice with organizational management of a social media account with regards to like membership or followers? Like, for example, today I looked at our Facebook and there were like a couple people, random people from the Philippines who were members. And I was like, well, you know, I'm not really sure where they would necessarily belong and actively contribute to this group. And then my other question was, how do you decide what is the impact that you are trying to measure? Is that more of a sort of personal evaluation that you did for yourself?
That's great. So, two questions. So, one is, what do you do with the people who are following your accounts from various places? And you're like, how are they connected to this? And then, how do you kind of measure your impact? So, for the first one, I think if your content is just trying to get information out there and it's not so much of a discussion group, I think it's fine. Yes, it might just be a bot who's following your content, but at the end of the day, we don't really know 100%. So to me, I'm putting it out there for the world to, see this content, and I don't care who necessarily chooses to follow it. So that would be my answer there. As far as how do you track your impact, I think you have to have your own personal way of assessing it, whatever that might be. But when it comes from a professional level, there are all sorts of apps and things out there, like Buffer, Hootsuite, etc., that can actually track your impact in terms of engagement, likes, shares, comments, etc. What I will say is these days, the algorithm and a lot of people are caring more about real engagement. So what I mean by that is it used to be everyone cared about, like, did you like my content, right? How many likes did you have? And we call that more vanity metrics, and people don't care about that as much now. The social media algorithms and people who kind of do the assessment of the impact, they care more about the saves and the shares. So if you are trying to get something to get spread, or to really have big reach, you want to make sure that you're having people saving it and sharing it, because that usually helps push it out a little bit further in the algorithm. And that's what's true today. As we said, things change rapidly. So the way that Instagram or whoever else chooses to push content out may change in a month for all we know. So
Thank you so much.
no
That is super
problem.
helpful.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just was curious. Great presentation. I really liked it a lot. What would be your key takeaway or your advice to maybe the younger generation that's maybe in their bachelor's degree or just finishing up their master's, and in terms of like social media and like safety and, you know, what would be your key takeaway for that?
Okay. So that is a lot of stuff there. So I think the first thing I would say is remember, you don't know where life's going to take you. Okay. So be very careful about the content that you put out there and make sure it's stuff that you are okay with owning. Like I have stuff on my Facebook from when I was in my early 20s, and some of it I like shake my head at now in my 40s, but it's who I was and I'm okay with that. So that's one big thing, is to make sure you're okay with whatever you're sharing and just try to imagine what you're going to be like in 20 years and then make it a lot less cool than what you think it'll be, just because, we're not all going to be famous and super big influencers or anything like that, right? Um, and then I think to remember that you have a voice, even if you've only been in public health for a semester, right? And you're just in class and you're learning all sorts of cool things about how important injury and violence prevention is. You still have a voice and you can share it. And I think it is really cool and refreshing to hear from people who are learning or just engaging in the content for the first time. It's like, today in school, I learned this. This is super important. This is what I think. And this is how I think it applies to me and my lived experience. Because you know what, as someone in your, in college, like I'm not there anymore. And it's fascinating, how someone in college might reflect or think about the importance of not texting and driving. I'm not there anymore. And I didn't grow up with texting as an option when I was learning how to drive. So I think, if you're young, be careful about what you put out there, but you don't have to totally censor yourself. Just make sure that you're going to be okay with it down the line. And then put yourself out there because your voice is still valuable.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I think we have time for one last question. Hearing none, I do want to reiterate how much we appreciate you coming on today. It was a phenomenal presentation. We will be posting this on iPrice's YouTube channel, and for all of our participants that attended today, we will be sending out a follow-up with a link to that location as well as an evaluation afterwards. It is very helpful for all of us if you can take the time to fill out that evaluation and provide any sort of comments regarding kind of your key takeaways from today. I will let everyone go with a couple of minutes back, but thank you so much, Dr. Agarwal. It was a real learning experience today.
Everyone, bye.